I write one failure of a lot of education, most of it, schools, teachers, not all of it, of course. Some people are doing an awesome job, and people can do some stuff to varying degrees, but a major failure is not making connections amongst a lot of things, teaching things in isolation. That is a failure to help educate, to really develop children. It is irrational, illogical. It is shattering people's lives and thoughts. We got to ask the 5 whys, figure out what's the cause. You can't necessarily blame any particular teacher or school because we don't know better. This is not obvious. We have to learn. Knowing how to reason has been something we've been developing humans through history. Go back in time, people did live good lives and did what they can, but there was a lot of stuff they didn't quite know yet, and they could have done better if they knew that. I mean, look at human history. It's full of, there's some good things in it, but it's full of a lot of death, destruction, pain, injury that we want to try to get rid of. Look what's going on in the culture today. Whether right or wrong, some people are trying to make a better world. We know that's what people want to do. We just got to get it right. So in education, we need to connect. Reasoning, thinking, living well is about making connections. Is wisdom about knowing one thing in isolation to everything else? Knowing a bunch of things in isolation? No. Wisdom, which we know is important, we need to live well. Wisdom is about making connections amongst things, and that's what we should do to help children develop. We should teach them, help develop the wisdom in them to become adults. We should not ignore our own wisdom. We should learn it and we should develop it, and we should use that to help children develop. Doing things in isolation, like teaching algebra alone, or what? If we're going to teach algebra separate from English, separate from physics, then what? Are we going to start teaching linear equations separate from quadratic equations? That's ludicrous. Everyone knows that doesn't make any sense. And if you look at the broader purpose of education, what it's about, which we need to think about, that's one problem in like a vicious circle of creating this. Not making connections and thinking. People don't think about what education's about enough. It's really about helping children become adults and figuring out what the heck we need to do. But again, it's hard. You got to ask a 5 whys analysis, not be a jerk or point fingers out of nowhere or judge in isolation. We need to judge in the big picture and see what the root cause is, which is mostly philosophical and some bad in particular influences. Then we got to look at some things like we are self-sovereign social animals. As social animals, people want to get along with the group, conform a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. It's in our nature. The thing is, doing it right and having reason and reality and truth govern that instead of going with a bunch of crap as we see in human history. A lot of stuff in the 1900s and beyond, a lot of bad stuff in human history. Again, because of not being committed to the truth and because we're social animals and we tend to conform and we can make this mass of a bunch of bad things added up, like an integral in calculus gone wild. But we need to make these connections. So for example, you can look at what other people say who are good thinkers, good scientists, good people at education. Again, instead of like, I know some will say, I only heard that from you. You're the only one that says that. Nonsense, such a bunch of crap. That's just ignorance. It's like either ignorance or lies. Some people know better and they know you're not the only one, but they'll lie and try to like isolate you. Bunch of nonsense. So, for example, we got to look at the big picture. That's what philosophy is about. Philosophy, etymologically, comes from love of wisdom, developed to separate people from the sophists who would be intellectual but more intellectualistic and try to use some thinking and reasoning and try to abuse reasoning and abuse logic for social manipulation and to win an argument regardless of truth. So philosophy, it's a commitment to the truth, a love of truth. You're committed to it. You don't abuse it, lie, or anything like that. So, and in being wise to make decisions, we got to know what's true. So we got to separate out a bunch of thoughts, think what is good, what's relevant, what's not. So logic develops out of it, out of being when you really develop wisdom what's it about? Logic come. So here, Albert Einstein, in a letter to Robert A. Thornton, physics professor at the University of Puerto Rico, 7 December 1944. This is from the Einstein Archive. I read this somewhere else. Tried to find it on the archive, but when I do a search, there's like 700 things that come up, and I'm not going through 700 things, but it seems sensible. Now, he says, quote, Einstein's writing to Robert Thornton, a professor of physics, quote, I fully agree with you about the significance and educational value of methodology, as well as history and philosophy of science. So many people today, and even professional scientists, seem to me like someone who has seen thousands of trees but has never seen a forest. A knowledge of the historic and philosophical background gives that kind of independence from prejudices of his generation from which most scientists are suffering. This independence created by philosophical insight is, in my opinion, the mark of distinction between a mere artisan or specialist and a real seeker after truth. Unquote. Now it's interesting, I've read this before, but I'll go ahead and read, after we read that one, this one from Martin Luther King Jr. I like that. There's interesting that Einstein says this, in my opinion, talks about independence from prejudices. We need this background. And he talks about the distinction between a mere artisan and a real seeker after truth, some things like that. But I'll put a link to this. I'll put the quote, not a link, but a quote and a link in the description to this thing, video description, and you can look at it yourself. And here's, given that stuff that Einstein says, this is interesting, Martin Luther King Jr., 1947. Oh, dang, I hadn't thought of it. Yeah, 44. Einstein, 47. King, so not the same year, but close. But King says something in some ways similar, not talking about philosophy, but talking about, when Einstein says most scientists seem like people who have seen the trees but have never seen the forest. Okay. MLK, quote, education must also train one for quick, resolute, and effective thinking. Unquote. I'll say that again. Quote, education must also train one for quick, resolute, and effective thinking. To think incisively and to think for oneself is very difficult. We are prone to let our mental life become invaded by legions of half-truths, prejudices, and propaganda. At this point, I often wonder whether or not education is fulfilling its purpose. A great majority of the so-called educated people do not think logically and scientifically. Even the press, the classroom, the platform, and the pulpit, in many instances, do not give us objective and unbiased truths. To save man from the morass of propaganda, in my opinion, is one of the chief aims of education. Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction. Unquote. Yes, agreed. Notice there's some similarities there. Einstein, MLK. We need to connect, look at the big picture, teach thinking skills. That's what it's about. To not do so is a failure in that degree. Schools, teachers, educational systems, too many of them, not all today. Some are doing a great job, and some, there's different measures. They're doing something to some degree, but it's not good enough for what we deserve and what we want to help students do, hopefully. Hopefully people care about children and students enough to want to do more and do better and not be as good enough for me, not good enough for me. I want people to be better than what I am. I want them to have a better life. I'm in this in part because I didn't like the education I got is good enough. I appreciate the teachers and everything like that, and they didn't know better. I sure the hell didn't figure out all this stuff on my own. I had to dig the hell into philosophy and do all this hard work, and I still have a lot to do. No one knows everything. There's always these unknown unknowns. There's things we know. There's things we know that we don't. Like I know the temperature in this room. I know there's a temperature on the other side of the earth, but I don't know what it is. It's a known unknown, but there are unknown unknowns. We got to keep in mind, if we want to be rational and be committed to the truth, and we learn good things and we want to learn better, if so, we need to be committed and we need to remember that there are unknown unknowns. Things we don't even know we don't know. and not act as if we know it all, or blow off something because we never heard it before. That's different. That's weird. No, it's weird. It's a failure to arbitrarily dismiss those things. We need to dig into things and figure out and learn what we don't know, make things better. So, okay, we've done some things, and yeah, people a long time ago, 10,000 years, they were doing the best they can, and they enjoyed lives, and they were some good people. But clearly, you look at human beings, you look at every one of us, we want to be better in all kinds of different ways. Improve, improve, improve. Enjoy life, be good at things, be good for ourselves so we can better take care of ourselves, better take care of our friends, make them happy, help them enjoy things, help them when they need it, better help people in society and at work, do a better job. We don't just stop. So we should do that. Learn, recognize that we're wrong on some things. We don't want to know some things. We should talk about that in class all the time. I was wrong. I don't know this. I made a mistake. How the heck are students going to learn that part of being a human if they're denied it for 12 years, where some teachers don't even want to admit they're wrong, and I know some do that, and it's just ludicrous and unethical, and it's not really helping people to grow up. We need to connect. We need to look, see what's going on. Again, as I was saying earlier, and I developed the thought, this, again, is not something that people know. I didn't know this. We have to learn. I learned from some really intelligent, wise people, reading, talking, listening to lectures, and owning it, processing it, just like Abraham Lincoln memorized Euclid's Elements, but it didn't magically make him a better reasoner, a lawyer, or politician. It didn't magically, radically transform our culture and make our world better. He had to process and think and apply logic and develop the ideas he learned in geometry to other areas, to law, to thinking, to writing, to reading, to make himself better. Same thing. We want to do this. Get this stuff, making connections to other areas, getting this idea about how it's important to human thought, developing in ourselves, and being able to train other people in it. But to do that, we got to connect. To connect, we have to know to connect. To train it in people, we have to know a little bit about how to do it. That's an essential thing. It's important about reasoning. If you learn Algebra 1, who gives a damn about Algebra 1 in isolation? Nobody. Even if someone does it, it's for a career or for love or something like that. There's always at least some connections. But really, if we're really going to do things right, we should be connecting Algebra 1 deliberately as a policy to chemistry and physics. And it shouldn't be, we should never hear, when are we ever going to use this? We should be hearing, stop, you've told me enough applications and examples already, I can't take in anymore. My cup is full. Things like that. And why in all this day and age and all these decades of people teaching, why isn't there this database or something of all these collected problems for all these different things? For this kind of topic in Algebra 1, there's cooking, fitness, chemistry, car, automobile stuff, physics, whatever. There should be a bunch of examples people can search from, all collated and collected for physics and literature. Why aren't there all these sentences and things in physics and geometry and algebra, word problems that people can diagram and do analyze the grammar of? It's people need to connect more and do things like that. Thinking is about connecting. Good thinking. To the degree we're in isolation is the degree we're failing, just as Einstein said here. You know, these people are seeing trees, but they're never seeing the forest. We have too much of a shattered consciousness, and therefore a shattered life. We need to connect more and integrate, have things developed more deeply and more fully, and see how things work together. See how one thing is connected to another in our thoughts, we can do better work. You know, if we're teaching everybody all these things in isolation and do some word problem in algebra, you never have anything to, related to anything else, it's ludicrous. Who does that? We should have a problem. You do this problem. It's related to something else. So it helps you see if you're right. Who does a problem at work that's related to nothing else? Nobody. We have some problem at work. You got to solve it. You do some math for a reason. And then there's all this automatic check. You care about what you do. You do the math. There's this automatic context and thinking about whether you're right or wrong. Whereas some people, you know, they do something on the calculator pops some number. That's right. That's the right number. The calculator popped it up. Or you do something in physics and that's it without any understanding. That's not preparing people for life, where they need to know about the physics of a car and driving in rain or through high water, or some fitness stuff, or stuff at work with engineering, physics, chemistry, accounting, selling houses. We need to connect things like that so you know better how to live and think, just as Einstein says here. Or E.O. Wilson in Consilience, The Unity of Knowledge, quote, "Few scientists are philosophers. Most are intellectual journeymen, exploring locally, hoping for a strike, living for the present," unquote. Unfortunately, truth. Again, what's the cause? What's the root cause? You know, that's again, connect. But that's one thing we need to do. Again, wisdom is about making connections and seeing the big picture. People should not be rejecting grammar and rejecting logic or misunderstanding it or things like that. We should be grasping that to be wise, to judge someone and to know how our friends are doing and ourselves and other people, and judge employers when they're interviewing us, judge employees, people working with us, evaluate our own performance. We need to do that well. We need good thinking methods, techniques of knowing what's right. That's logic. That's where it comes from. And knowing what's right and what's wrong, conceptually, not perceptually. Simple thing there. We need to do that. Or how do we do well at work? Techniques, thinking skills, methods matter. So connect is one thing we need to do. It's in wisdom. That's what it's all about. What did Galileo and Newton do to help start science? They brought Aristotelian epistemological axioms. What are basic ideas about how knowledge works? All thought should be connected to the evidence of the senses. It shouldn't be separate as Plato thought, where you got concepts and all this theory stuff separate from perception. They knew that they should be integrated, and they swept that out and did a revolution in physics, and that is to some extent still with us, but some people still today don't get it and are anti-reality, anti-reason, and do a lot of Platonic stuff and worse. But Newton, Galileo, others, they connected math to physics. They didn't say math has nothing to do with physics, it's just geometry. What does it have to do with anything? Stick to it. Isolate. You know, this is math class. What does it have to do with geometry? That's ludicrous. Or, yeah, I mean, what does it have to do with physics? Sorry, I'm a little tired. Okay. They didn't say, this is physics. That had nothing to do with math. We just study physics here. No, they had to fight some of that. They kicked it out as wrong. We know. Or astronomy. What do people do? They've connected geometry to astronomy. Newton engaged in the grand synthesis. He didn't isolate. He didn't shatter. Other people had not quite done that. Some people nowadays do that, but people back then quite didn't know how to do it or what. So you can't say they shattered it. They were just doing what they didn't know. They didn't know anything, so they didn't do anything better, I should say. But Newton engaged in the grand synthesis. He got celestial mechanics, terrestrial mechanics, stuff in astronomy, stuff on Earth, and united the field within a synthesis. Connect. Or William Harvey brought some math into biology when he was studying circulation. Instead of just saying, oh, we think it's the heart pushing blood, he proved it. Or Darwin, when he studied biology, whether you like evolution or not, he synthesized geology, and history and biology and other fields to develop evolutionary biology. And that's been developed even more when we bring in chemistry and math and physics and so on. If we didn't bring in like chemistry and physics and math into human health, imagine what that would be like. We got to know there's chemicals involved. You know, the idea of this is chemistry, what does it have to do with anything else? This is algebra, what does it do with anything else? Is ludicrous, is irrational, it's dangerous. That's shattering things. There you see with this health example. We know we need chemicals and medicines and physics to do good stuff with health. Bone, health, strength, a lot of physics to bones, there's biomechanics, an important field, like Katie Bowman, she does some of that. And we need to know how the brain works properly, and that is based on electricity. We need math for it too. Or to get a cell phone. We need to unite all these different fields. People had to connect magnetism and electricity, which were thought different before. And we had to use math to do it in context of physics, things like that. And then with some of these, Steve Jobs and others brought in aesthetics to make it beautiful with the font and stuff. Materials, physics, chemistry, you know, materials again, sound, so much physics and math involved and all this stuff. Connect, connect, connect. Connect or die. We need to have connection in education. To the extent it's not there, is the extent it's a failure. So, like some people here, scroll up. Okay, scroll. So here, the great educator Marva Collins. Here. Marva Collins, quote, Marva Collins insisted on frequent reading and writing through which children learn about their world and how what may seem separate matters when taught in subject silos readily connect in thinking minds. Yeah, you got to be thinking to do it. Non-thinking minds shatter. Okay, so thinking minds, unquote. Okay, and I heard from someone who would know, I think someone who watched her teach, if I recall. I heard this in a philosophy lecture, this Dr. Leonard Peikoff. Yeah, she was a master of making connections, Marva Collins was. Yeah, he saw live and in person. He saw Marva Collins teaching, and she was a master of making connections. She'd always be having students connect, like one subject to another, never in isolation. Or in some Montessori schools, from the Real School of Montessori, this article, Multidisciplinary Approach that Boosts Learning Outcomes to the Next Level. Quote, one of the advantages of a multidisciplinary educational approach is that you gain a more comprehensive grasp of the world. Yes. A multidisciplinary approach combines aspects of each department into the study plans of the other, rather than focusing on individual divisions in their subject topics individually. Multidisciplinary learning isn't simply a theory of education, it's a practical manner of seeing the world. Why should school be any different? When you graduate, you'll be interacting with individuals from all walks of life. So why should school be any different? It will be easier for you to perform in the working world if you can compile and collaborate with individuals from many walks of life. There is yet another breakthrough with this approach. Those who experience this process of learning will gain a strong and deeper understanding of the subject. When that happens, the student has a clear vision of what he or she likes, where his aptitude lies, and what he wants to pursue. This is completely missing in a subject-based curriculum approach. And why is that the case? It is because when a student learns subjects in isolation, he does not get the kind of exposure to knowledge that is needed for him to make a clear call on whether this subject works for him or not. Okay. I think it should say stronger and deeper understanding and some things like that, but whatever. So there's some thoughts. So thankfully, there are some people out there working on making connections, being interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. But of course, what they think about logic and epistemology can make a difference in how well they do, because we got to connect. We got to be multidisciplinary and real and true. So it's good. They deserve credit for some of that, but sometimes they're not quite getting the most of it, and they can be off. But we need to connect, please. Let's make connections so we can live better lives ourselves. We bring it in ourselves. It helps our friends and family because we can better help them. And it helps students develop their full human potential, which we should want. That's why we should be a teacher, to help people develop, to be adult, go from children to adult, go from childhood to adult, be adults who are ready to dig into life. As Thoreau said, to suck the marrow out of it, to make sure that they live life to the full. They should know what is true and what is good so they can best be happy. A good life and a happy life and a moral life all together. So let's try to work on that. If you need help, give me a call. I can help with tutoring students, consulting, teacher training, corporate training, training teachers, corporate coaching, all kinds of things like that. And I would love to, because I like the world being better and seeing what people can do with these ideas. We can help each other. So let's get out there and be full, developed, integrated, connected human beings in our minds, in our lives. Peace.